Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's continue our game of Iwaihime on PC. I just didn't understand Kurakami anymore. I thought I did just a little while ago, but was that all just part of the nightmare? The slimy, grotesque blob showed itself. It had finally made it down the stairs and was heading right our way. The blob had terrified me just a minute ago, but that all suddenly seemed worlds away. Right, because this was all a dream. A bad dream, that's all.
今度はなんだ？ブヨブヨした化け物の登場かよ。これならさっきの女幽霊みたいなやつの方が多少はマシだぜ。
It seemed Kaminuma was already fully aware that this was a nightmare. He wasn't fazed by the creepy giant blob in the slightest. Rather, he was downright amused by its bizarre appearance. Kurakami was now completely focused on him. She moaned obscenely as she kept clinging to his leg. The more I saw that, the stupider I felt for ever being scared in this situation. Kaminuma shrugged off Kurakami as he hurled obscenities at her. I raised my head to see who he was talking to, and realized the sinister shadow had appeared unnoticed. It was dark as a void, but had long hair that reached its feet, giving it the appearance of a woman. Withered branches sprouted out of its head like thorns.
上沼君逃げないと。
俺はもう逃げ回るのに疲れちまったんだよ。どうせ夢の中じゃねえか。ならいっそスカッと終わらせてもらいたいもんだぜ。
Kaminuma spread his arms and waited for her. The foreboding shadow also spread its arms and grabbed him. Kaminuma tried to act tough, but the pain won over in the end. I clearly heard the sound of a withered branch breaking. A moment later, Kaminuma's upper half snapped like a decayed tree and collapsed backwards with a visceral splash. His head, arms, and elbows smashed into pieces on the floor and scattered into chunks. But his legs remained standing. Despite that, Kurakami just kept clinging to his leg. I felt no fear. I had already grown numb to such emotions. All I could do was laugh. I couldn't think of any other way to express what I was feeling. Kurakami turned to me as though she didn't notice the shadow that had so brutally killed Kaminuma. It seemed she'd already lost interest in the scattered pieces that used to be him. The change in her behavior was far more terrifying than the monster.
私にはお前しかいないんだ。お前をずっとずっと待っていたんだから。本当に本当に待っていたんだから。
わからないよ。僕にはもう本当に黒髪さんがわからないよ。
Still lying on my backside, I scooted away from Kurakami as she slithered towards me. That sight must have been quite saddening for her. Her eyes welled with tears and warped with sorrow. But I couldn't accept her. All I was capable of at that point was laughing in disbelief. Just then, the female shadow, its arms spread wide, lunged towards me.
お前だけを信じて今日まで耐えてきたのに
Her suggestive words were all nonsense. I was a fool for ever thinking there was some kind of mysterious fate at play and falling for her spell.
黒髪さんなんているわけもない。僕たちはつい先日初めて言葉を交わしたばかりの赤の他人。僕たちの間にどんな運命が絆があったって言うんだ。ないんだよ。何にもない。なのに僕はどうして黒髪さんに関わってしまったんだ。
It was just as Kiko said. I should have never gotten involved with this insane girl. So that's why all this insane stuff is happening.
私をそんな悲しい目で見ないで。
黒髪さんこそどうして僕をそんな悲しい目で見るんだよ。僕にはもうさっぱり意味がわからないんだよ。
The quivering blob was right behind me, with the sinister shadow that pulverized Kaminuma right before me. Meanwhile, Kurakami was clinging to my leg. The blob would twist my neck with its hairy arm-shaped lumps, while the shadow would fall upon me.
化け物がよりどりみどりってわけだ。
Which would kill me? The blob? The shadow? No, it was definitely Kurokami. Just then, the shadow and the blob started fighting over me. Kurokami kept babbling her nonsense as she gazed seductively at me. All I could do was keep laughing dryly, as if it were the funniest thing in the world. However, my heart ached yet again at the sight of her moist eyes. All of a sudden, I heard a death cry. The fleshy blob descended upon me and smashed my head to bits. It seemed the monster's fight was over. I felt just like Kaminuma. This was all just some repulsive nightmare anyway, so I wanted it to end as soon as possible. When did I get here? No, it was the other way around. Where had I been all this time? Kurokami was still sitting in the wheelchair, her father pushing her along, and I was still standing right in front of them. Had I been standing here all this time? Just then, Kurokami stood up on her broken leg.
黒髪さん。僕にはもう君がわからないよ。
私にはわかるわ。そして私にしかわからないからもうお願い。
Kurokami bitterly ground her teeth and wept. I was bewildered, yet my heart ached at her tears once more.
やめてよ。もう僕は君に惑わされたりしない。僕は君に関わっちゃいけなかったんだ。
It felt like I was tearing my own heart in two. Just a short while ago, I was telling her how I'd save her. Yet here I was now, cruelly denouncing her. Even so, I just didn't understand what was what anymore. An empty laugh burst out of me, just like in that nightmare.
私がお前を惑わす。惑わすのはお前の方。もういや、こんなせい耐えられない。
黒髪さん。
What? It took a few seconds before a woman screamed in shock. After all, there was now a gaping hole in my neck. My empty laugh no longer exited through my mouth. It just leaked rapidly out the new hole in my neck.
血が出てる。
トイ
父上、お許しください。トイはもうこんなせいに耐えられません。もういや。
Kurokami tightened her grip on the box cutter in her hand. She then looked into my eyes.
お前は本当に遅すぎる。だからもう私は楽になってもいいよね。
And with that, she spoke no further. Only vivid blood gushed through the new hole, squirming on her own neck. I was rapidly losing consciousness. The world was fading into pitch black darkness. I no longer understood anything. My mind couldn't wrap itself around it. My feelings, hers, what had happened, what was happening. I didn't understand any of it anymore. Sorry, Kiko. I should have never gotten mixed up with her.
亀沼くん、具合はどうかしら。起き上がれそう？
Hinagata opened the curtain to find Kamenuma still sleeping in the infirmary bed. However, he had the covers over his head, so she couldn't see how he was doing.
亀沼くん、ぐっすりなのかしら。
Hinagata rolled back the covers with an impish smile. Her shrill scream echoed throughout the school. I woke up in what probably was a hospital bed. My body was sluggish, and there were bandages wrapped around my neck. I tried moving a little, only for my throat to sting. But it seemed like I'd survived. I had to find out if I was still in that nightmare. I slowly got out of bed as I tried to find the angle that least hurt my neck. I opened the curtain slightly and felt a surge of relief at the sight of the lights of the town. Good. I wasn't in that maddening nightmare anymore. There was no girl clinging to my leg. No disgusting blobs roaring. No sinister shadows to be seen. This was, without a doubt, the real world. Wait. The real world? I saw orange flickers in the night outside. Those flickers rose up into the pitch-black sky, one after another like fireworks. They were like dragons. I saw dragons painted in flames rising up all over town. It was an unimaginable, beautiful sight straight out of a fairy tale. A dream-like scenery not of this world. This world was a dream. And it wasn't just me this time. The whole world had been sucked into a nightmare. The blazing dragons turned into tornadoes and spun up into the heavens. The scorching hellfire tore up both the night sky and the veneer of reality that covered the world and burned them all away. The world was burning to ashes. And so would this place before long. Dragons of fire spouted out over town, one after another. I felt like I locked eyes with one of those newborn dragons. Forgive me, Kiko. I should have listened to you. Yeah, I'm gonna assume that this is a that will die a couple times, and that will travel back in time or travel to other dimensions that appear to be back in time. Which, oddly enough, it's a fairly well-used mechanic in these horror or sci-fi visual novels, but so far I'm not tired of them. It seems like everybody chooses a really interesting take on time travel or alternate dimension travel. And they really emphasize the characterization, so you get to know everyone really well from all sorts of different angles. And I think that's what's so appealing about these, these games where you just rewind back and replay another life. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to what happens in the rest of our timelines. That chess piece with the horse's head, that's called a knight, right? But these pieces were huge. Just one of them was the size of a liquor bottle. That piece was pinched between even larger fingers and smashed head-on into one of mine. The remainder of the pieces scattered about with a thrilling sound. The audience of card soldiers cheered. The Sheesh King's head alone was as huge as a boulder, so his disgusting laugh was boomingly loud. He wore an outfit befitting the king of card soldiers, topped with a bowl cut and Coke bottle glasses. What's more, he had pimples all over his face. On the visual and auditory discomfort scale, he'd win in a landslide, no questions asked. Mr. Rabbit gripped his head helplessly. There was a gargantuan chessboard between us and the Sheesh King. On it were a mix of what appeared to be red and black chess pieces. But this was in fact Siege, a game similar but completely different from chess. I had no idea what the rules were. You know how knights have a very specific movement pattern in chess? Yeah, that was all out the window in Siege. The whole thing made no sense. Like, you could move one square if a black cat jumped out, or you could hide behind another piece if a thrush chirped. Even though I was the player, I had no choice but to leave my fate in the hands of this rabbit who knew the rules.
惜しいでちゅね。大きな駒を失っちゃったでちゅね。
うさぎさん、今失った駒って結構痛いわけ？一気にこれで攻め込んでかき回すつもりだったんだよ。本当だよ。
これでまた攻め手がなくなっちゃったわけですよ。あと一息でこのボクチンを追い詰められたかもしれないのにね。
悔しいよ。今の駒がなくなっちゃった。そんな大事な大駒をぼんやりしてるから取られちゃうんだよ。堪忍してよね。
まだまだそちらにも置ける駒はあるでちゅよ。ゲームが面白くなるのはこれからなのでちゅ。
参ったなあ、もう仕方ないな。もうほんとこれっきりだからね。エリス、ありがとう、助かるよ。
Some parts of Siege resembled Chogi. Much like that game, you could add new pieces to the board. The card soldiers cheered with joy when they learned I'd decided to add a new piece.
まあ問題は新しい駒を作るのがちょいと面倒なだけなんだけどね。でもエリスは強いから助かるよ。僕にもっと勇気があったら。まあまあいいっていいって。そこはこのエリス姫に任せといて。
A trolley with tools showed up, and the audience cheered again. Boy, they sure don't pull any punches, huh? The card soldier's trolley contained an assortment of sickening torture tools whose purpose I didn't want to imagine.
今度はどんな駒が追加されちゃうですか？あんまり強い駒だと困っちゃうでちゅ。
ああ、うさぎさん、マジで次はチェックメイトをお願いね。そのつもりだよ。大駒を揃えて一気にチェックメイトしてやるんだ。大駒を揃えてって今度はどんな駒がどのくらいいるわけ？頼みにくいんだけど。どーんと来なさいな。ミノベ県王国はこのエリス姫様が守るんだからね。
頼もしいお姫様でちゅよ。ますます好きになったでちゅ。きっとこの国を手に入れて僕ちんの新しい家族に迎えてあげるでちゅ。
うぎー、マジでパス。うさぎさん、マジで強い駒よろしくさ。それで何の駒がいるんだって？
The rabbit fidgeted apologetically.
左手の小指と左手の手首、あと右手の指を4本ももらえればきっと。本当にそれだけ？それだけで駒が足りるの？できればあと左目の駒も欲しいんだよ。あれがあればきっと。もう一コマサービスしちゃうからさ。今度こそ絶対決めてよ。ありがとうエリス。じゃあ上の前歯を3本と奥歯を2本でもう一つコマを。好きにしてちょうだいな。ありがとうエリス。これで勝てるよ。今度こそ絶対に勝てる。
これは困ったですよ。とんでもない大駒がたくさん来るのですよ。これじゃ僕ちん負けちゃうでちゅ。
あんたのニキビ面を二度と見なくて済むなら、乙女の指だの腕だの歯だのちょろいもんよ。
そこまで嫌われてるなんて僕ちん心狂っちいでちゅ。
ごめんねエリス、本当にごめんね。なるべく痛くないようにやるからね。
And with that apology, Mr. Rabbit picked up a torture tool similar to a giant pair of nail clippers and approached me. The animated audience suddenly fell silent and gulped as they watched. When I thought about it, the main attraction of this game, no, this show, was less the match itself and more the adding of new pieces. After all, even the Shish King was watching me with far more excitement than when he took any of the pieces on the board. Wasn't he intending to make me part of his family? At this rate, my whole body would become siege pieces before that ever happened, wouldn't it?
じゃあ左手の小指から行くからね。ごめんねエリス、ごめんねごめんね。謝んなくていいから、次こそ絶対にチェックメイトをよろしく。
Mr. Rabbit placed the nail clippers, no, finger clippers, made for the sole purpose of cleaving off a left pinky above my left hand. Why was such a large audience so quiet? It'd be way easier to distract myself if they were cheering like they were before.
変にビクビクしないで、バチーンと一発でお願いね。さっきみたいに下手に気を使われる方がかえって痛いんだからさ。ねえ、ごめん。今度はもっと痛くないようにする。
Mr. Rabbit put the tip of the razor-sharp blade against the last finger I had left on my left hand. Yes, that's right. I'd already given up the others in exchange for more pieces.
どうせ手首も切るんでしょ。先にそっちからやってくれればいいのに。ルールだからね、仕方ないんだ。じゃあ行くよ。
I'd be damned if I gave that pimple-faced bastard and the audience anything to rejoice over. Don't acknowledge it. Don't acknowledge it.
せーの。そういうの言わないでいいから。無言でザクッと来てちょうだい。
Don't acknowledge it. Don't acknowledge it. I felt like there was a red-hot iron scarring the spot where my pinky used to be, now swollen 100-fold. The swelling ached in sync with the rapid beating of my heart. But no, I couldn't acknowledge it. I couldn't bear it if I did. I simply stared off into space as I bit my upper lip, my eyes widening. And then I concentrated solely on the thought that I was nothing more than a statue.
次は左手首ね。あ、変に気を使われる方が痛いんだよね。ごめんごめん。
I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to get it over with. It was taking all I had to wear a mask of composure. It was suffocating. Just then, I locked eyes with the Shish King. He, along with the audience of Car's soldiers, stared at me with rapt attention. Their faces were lit up with anticipation. Screw you all. Like hell, I'll play to your expectations. Like hell. Like hell. Like hell. I felt like my brain had been stabbed with a sharpened ice pick. And immediately after, the sensation in everything from my left wrist up had become a giant scorching heat, which beat violently. I couldn't acknowledge it. I couldn't acknowledge it. I couldn't accept that sensation. I was a statue. I was a statue. A statue. A statue. A statue. I fought back everything building in my throat, If I released it, that meant I would have acknowledged it. But despite all my efforts, I whimpered anyway.
何か言った？言った？言った？
別に何も。
I put on the bravest face I could muster, yet couldn't hide the beads of cold sweat seeping down my face. Even so, I couldn't acknowledge it. I couldn't acknowledge it. I would never give the damned audience what they wanted.
次は右手の指4本だから大丈夫？大丈夫？なんか使うなって言ってんで。
I gave the rabbit a twisted smile to show I was fine, even as sweat poured down my forehead. I couldn't accept it hurt. I couldn't acknowledge it. I couldn't acknowledge it. Just then, there was a gust of air out of nowhere, carrying a leaf. The leaf caressed my left hand. And I felt my desperate resistance shatter to pieces. Ah! Ah! I unleashed a scream of agony from deep within. It was too late. Now that I'd acknowledged it, it was all too late. A gushing sensation I'd been ignoring from the stump that used to be my left hand assaulted me. It felt like a fire hose. It reached my brain, and with that, I lost the willpower to hold back my screams. The audience immediately burst into a tumultuous uproar of laughter. That sight spun around like a whirlpool, and it swallowed me up. But I wouldn't let it take my sanity. Just then, I felt cold metal press against my right hand. Mr. Rabbit had just finished setting up a horrific metallic device that would rip off my fingers.
行くよ。無理。絶対無理。でも、あと右手の指を4本と左目と上の前歯3本と奥歯を2本もらわないと駒が揃わないよ。無理だってば。無理。ごめんねエリス。この国を守るためだよ。許して。
その声がたまらないでちゅよ。
The card soldier's audience surged in a wave of ecstasy and excitement. Hippleface was also rolling around with laughter. But Mr. Rabbit's display of consideration was just as annoying to me.
大丈夫？痛いよね。ごめんね。あと左目と歯だよ。どっちからにする？
What does it matter? It's all the same. Why don't you take my place for a change, huh?
さあ、次は目でちか、前歯でちか、奥歯でちか。さあ、皆さんはどっちがいいですか？左目から目前歯奥歯もギリぐり引き抜いて。
どっちからにするの？エリスが決めてくれなきゃわかんないよ。
I couldn't acknowledge the pain. I wouldn't be these bastards' entertainment.
じゃあ目からお願いしちゃうかな。そうすりゃあんたの汚いニキビ面半分見なくて済むからね。
勇敢なお姫様でちゅよ。
分かったよエリス。痛くないように一瞬で済ませるからね。
Even if it would only take a second to crush it, the pain would still linger for a long, long time. But I couldn't let that fear show. I was strong. I had to smile, even in times like these. Mr. Rabbit took a birdcage-shaped torture tool and put it on my head. There was now a sharp, pointy drill literally staring me in the eye. Mr. Rabbit shut the hinges tight so I couldn't take it off.
じゃあ今度は行くよって言わないからね。言わないからね。言わないからね。
He spun a handle attached to the cage. Just then, the drill approached my eye with a grinding noise. I closed my eyes, and the drill hit my eyelid. The drill shrieked as it pierced right through it. However, my smile never broke. I had to smile or I'd lose. That was my belief. But just then, all of that suddenly receded. I heard someone calling me. Ooh, who was it? Whoever it was, I could tell that their calls had ended this nightmare. But this was the first time that ever happened.
大丈夫ですか?
There was a boy in front of me. He wasn't in my class. This complete stranger had been the one calling out to me.
おいらのこと？
ひどく具合が悪そうに見えたので大丈夫かなって。
I didn't know him, but the purity in his eyes conveyed his sincerity. If he hadn't said anything, I'd probably be continuing to suffer in my nightmare. Still, though, I felt like today's dream had been particularly horrible. I couldn't remember it well, but it had definitely been an awful one.
誰だか知んないけどありがとう。おいらってちょっぴり悪夢症でさ。
悪夢症?
おいら頭おかしいからさ、よく悪い白チュームにうなされちゃうんだよね。お昼食べてうとうとしてたらまたたちの悪い夢にうなされてたみたい。
悪い夢をしつこく見るなら何かの病気のサインかもしれないよ。保健室で先生に相談した方がいいんじゃないかな。
保健の先生？あははは、タマユは間に合ってるよ。大丈夫大丈夫。
割と元気そうだぜ。よかったよかった。
みたいだね。でも一度先生に相談してみてね。夢は心や体調のサインであることも多いから。
あんがと。でもまあオイラのは多分そういうのじゃないから。不思議の国のアリスならぬ悪夢の国のエリスだからね。ま、とにかくありがとう。あんたも用があって通りかかったんでしょ？昼休みは短いよ。そうそう、行って行って。
うん。じゃあ行くよ、夏くん。
こんなのよ、本当にただのかすり傷なんだぜ。傷なんざ舐めときゃ治るってのが男ってもんだぜ。
ダメだよ。ばい菌が入って化膿したら大変なんだから。
高校男児がすり傷程度で保健室なんて恥ずかしいんだよ。
ダメだよ。ちゃんと消毒薬を塗ってもらおうね。
やだー！俺あのしみるやつ大嫌いなんだ
ー。ダメだよ。さあ保健室へ行こう。
いていてててててて、そんなバカ力で掴むな、引っ張るな。
失礼します。先生、傷の消毒をお願いします。お昼寝中お邪魔をしてすみませんでした。
そんな寝てないわよ。ちょっと午後の陽気にうつらうつらとしちゃってただけなんだから。
へっへっへ、その言い訳じゃあ確実に廊下に立たされますぜ。というか先週来た時も確か居眠りしてませんでしたっけ？
そんな 教頭先生に告げ口するのは許してよね。じゃないと私教頭先生に怒られる、査定が最低、学校クビ、路頭に迷う死。お願いよ、教頭先生には黙っててくれるなら、先生いけない個人授業とか特別にしてあげようかな。そしてその光景を隠し撮り、脅迫、口止め料たんまり、左打ちはでウハウハ、素敵なセレブとの恋も。
鈴原先生にいきなり腹パンかよ。さすがグレートな男だぜ。
まだ寝ぼけてるみたいだったからしつけにいいかなと思って。
ナイスパンチよ、ありがとう、すっきりしたわ。それで保健室にご用は何かしら。また彼が何かいたずらをしてすりむきでもしたの？
こんなの男の勲章だぜ。
そうだね、痛みに耐えられる夏くんは男の鏡だと思うな。
へへへ、鈴原に言われるとまんざらでもねえぜ。
なら痛いしみる消毒薬も頑張れるよね。
あるわよ、よーく効く痛い消毒薬が。
やめろ、離せ鈴原。
はい、これでよし。
よかったね、これで怪我もきれいに治ると思うよ。それ以上に頑張って耐えた夏くんがかっこいいと思ったよ。
まあな、男熱田夏也消毒薬程度でヒーヒー言うようなやわじゃねえからな。
敦田君は元気盛りで怪我が絶えないわね。それはそうと、あなた鈴原進君だっけ？あなたも面倒見のいい友達ね。暑いのと涼しいのであなたたちちょうどいいコンビかも。
よっしゃー、グレート鈴原と俺がついにコンビと認められたぜ。
よく言ってるけどグレート鈴原って何？
お前が超ウルトラスーパーレアにグレートな男だからよ。
プロレスラーみたいな名前だな。
ねえ、グレート鈴原君とグレート敦田君。
俺はまだ全然グレートな男じゃないんです。しかしいつかはそう言われてみて。
じゃあグレート鈴原君とノーマル敦田君。
ノーマルはさすがに。
じゃあグレート鈴原君とアブノーマル敦田君ね。
それは絶対に嫌じゃ。
夏くんはどんなあだ名でもかっこいいと思うよ。
ところであなたたち部活動は何かやってる？
いえ、何も。
鈴原は空手やってたんだろ。空手部とか入ればきっとグレートな伝説を築いちまう気がするぜ。
空手をやってるの？結構立派な拳をしてるとは思ってたけど。
ちょっと違うんですけど、まあ家で自主練をしてます。
それはとても忙しい？
毎日夕方は欠かさずに。
さすがだぜ。やはりそのグレートな力は日々の鍛錬から生み出されていたんだな。
でもちょっとくらいは時間が取れない？
何かの部活の勧誘ですか？
察しがいいわね。私が顧問をしているとある部にぜひ参加してみない？決して怪しい部活じゃないのよ。ちゃんと学校公認だし、部活の都合の合う時だけ参加してくれてもいいの。休日の活動もあるけれどたまにだけよ。
休日がなくなるのは嫌だな。
たまによ。せいぜい月に一度くらいかしらね。
何の部活ですか？
よくぞ聞いてくれました。その名もズバリシャチホコ部。
シャチ
ここ？
鈴間篤太くんまで。
キコちゃんもシャチホコ部だったんだね。知らなかったよ。
もったいぶらずに教えてくださいよ先生。何なんすかシャチホコ部って。すんげえグレートな響きを感じるっすよ。
正式名称は社会地域奉仕貢献部っていうの。略してシャチホコ部ってわけね。
Alright, why don't we stop it there? This is audap watching Iwaihime on PC. Wow, boy, what a sudden shift in tone. But I'm sure it'll get more horrible as time goes on. It's already been, very deep into the horror genre. So, I mean, I kind of like the break after it being so serious and being so horrible and horribly descriptive. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I like it this light either. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.